Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Finneran Pavilion. As the Countdown to Tip-Off show takes place tonight, as the Wildcats prepare to take on the St. John's Red Storm. Red Storm come in with a 14-13 overall record, 3-11 in the Big East. Wildcats improved to 21-6 over the weekend and 10-4 in the Big East. Game time tonight, 6:30 p.m. right here from the Finneran Pavilion. I'm joined by Whitey Rigsby. Whitey, a little special edition tonight will be the retirement jersey for Kyle Lowry. What were some of your thoughts as Kyle in his playing career?
Yeah, certainly, Steve, one of my all-time favorite players, and been fortunate to see so many players here. And I always look for my favorite guys seem to be guys who are tough guys. Your brother, John Pennell, one of the toughest players we ever had here. John Haynes, tough guy. And I look at Kyle Lowry in that same mold. He came in, and what he brought was a toughness and an energy to a very good team. This is a team that had Randy Foye, Alan Ray, Mike Nardi, Curtis Sumter already on it. And what Kyle made different, he just made that team, that group tougher in general.
Yeah, I always use it like a sports channel. They always talk about when Pete Rose came to the Phillies in 1980, made that difference. Kyle Lowry came in with a bunch of good players, as you mentioned, the Foys and the Sumters and the Rays, and he was that missing piece that they needed. Maybe that little bit of an edge that you talk about that got them over the hump.
Yeah, and it was really, he joined a team that didn't need a player like him. They didn't need that position. They had Nardi, they had Randy Foye, so they really didn't need a point guard per se, but he was so good and so tough, more than good, that Coach Wright had to put him on the floor. It's when Coach Wright first went with the four guards.
And that was back in 2005, 2006, which kind of really laid the foundation for the success Jay Wright's had here at Villanova. That was that first team that made that run to a Sweet 16, playing that game up at North Carolina, the infamous Allen Ray travel game, and then going to the Final Eight the following season, falling to the eventual national champion Florida Gators.
Yeah, and this is a kid, Kyle Lowry, as we talk about, a tough kid from North Philly, who tore his ACL the summer before he came here. They thought he would right? No, he was playing by the end of December, played in the famous game, the snow game against Kansas in January, where, if I remember correctly, he left that game rather early because of an altercation that happened on the court. Back to his toughness. I just think more than anything, he brought a toughness to this team.
Yeah, and Kyle had such an effective year and a half, really, year and three quarters here. He moved on to the NBA and has had an outstanding career. As you mentioned, a six-time All-Star. Did you envision him being this good a pro?
No, I didn't, Steve, because as we saw him as a college player, I'm just beating up the word tough. He was tough. He wasn't a great shooter. Was not even a plus shooter. He goes to the NBA, he's in a three-point shooting contest and becomes a six-time All-Star, a gold medalist, and more than anything, a world champion. And I know that's what he's thrilled about.
And he also won an Olympic gold medal along the way. So his NBA career is a borderline Hall of Fame career. What he's been able to do, as I mentioned, the six-time All-Stars, an Olympic gold medal, obviously championship, and also just a pillar in this community as well. What he's done for the university and what he's done in North Philadelphia has been really amazing.
Yeah, and he's a pillar in the community up in Toronto. Remember, he more than any other Raptor player stayed. I mean, he's been in Canada now for 7 or 8 years. Is their all-time leading assister. He's one of the best players they've ever had in the program. Maybe the best player, and certainly he's a guy that the Hall of Fame is going to have to look at in a few years.
Yeah. And an outstanding gift to Villanova basketball. The men's locker room named after Kyle with a 7-figure donation to the program. And every game here in December, they run those Christmas toys for in the area in Philadelphia. He's been just a pillar as an adult. I think he's taken his years at Villanova and really exceeded what Villanova is really all about.
Yeah, he's not forgotten his roots. You hear about that guy make a lot of money. He's made a lot of money. He hasn't forgotten North Philly. He hasn't forgotten Villanova. He hasn't forgotten the people that he grew up with and the people he played with. And he's a wonderful kid, and I get a kick out. I will text him sometime when a game's over, and 10 minutes later from the locker room, he'll text me back, "Thanks a lot, man." I mean, he remembers where he came from.
And speak about that group, we had an opportunity to catch up with them this summer. We had a 2006 roundtable to kind of go over those really two good, outstanding seasons that Kyle Lowry played here at Villanova.
We just started learning. So if you would have came a year earlier, it would have been all bad. Yeah. So we just started.
All the juniors.
Yeah, it just changed for us, and it was like, all right, we can do something. And then you came, and it just was like, all right, this kid's really good. He's gonna be this, and he's gonna be that. And the next thing you know, all right, this kid, He went into Philly. We told him not to. He's supposed to be here.
So let me tell you right now.
I can't wait to hear this because I've told the story a million times.
So I
can't wait to hear his version.
So I was like, this was at the point where we had our meeting. Like I was, like I'm not going to school. I'm done. I'm not coming back. I hated summer school. I hated everything about it. I ain't like y'all. I was just like, I mean, like the only thing the only thing I learned at that point was how to throw a crisp pass, and that was from Mike. I tell y'all right now, Mike Nardi is the reason I throw good passes. I give him credit all the time. He's like, no, you got to throw it this way. And that's the only thing I felt I learned, but I was learning a lot. So I was like, I'm out of here. So that morning, I was like, Juan, my best friend, was like, yo, you gotta go to, you got what you call it? You got
it was orientation.
Freshman orientation.
Freshman
I was like,
orientation.
I ain't going to that.
And that's his answer. And I had said to him, Kyle,
yeah,
you better be on time for. If you're not here for freshman orientation, you're not playing this year. You got to be here. That was his response. I'm not going to that.
It was the hood league, so you know I'm in the hood. Like, so I go to the league. I'm playing. I hit the first 3 threes. Boom, boom, boom. I'm like, yeah. I'm not even thinking about it. I do a move. I drive the lane. Hop step. Boom, pop. Knee pop, right? I didn't know. So whatever goes time, I couldn't move, and I looked at the time, and the clock was like 12. It was like 12 o'clock. It was like 12:07, and I was like, this is someone telling me because orientation started at 12 o'clock. And I was like, yeah, this is something that.
That's interesting. You really thought that?
Yeah, I was like, yo, this is.
Weren't supposed to be there.
I wasn't supposed to be playing that league. It was like 12:07. The game.
12:07. I was thinking, all right, this is it.
It's over.
He's done.
So
I'm done. I couldn't find him. We never got the call. We couldn't find him.
I went straight to.
So we started calling everybody like, yo,
new.
where is he? You know, he's not here for orientation. Where is he? Nobody knew where he was. And then we get somebody on the streets. It's like, yo, he was playing in a game. So we're mad that he was in a game. But they didn't know that he tore they knew he got hurt his knee, but they didn't know it was ACL. So finally we just track him down there. He's in the hospital. They're like, he tore his ACL. That's it, I'm done with him. Like, oh, this poor kid. I'm like, I feel so bad for him now.
It worked out. It worked out. These dudes right here, even the dudes that ain't here, I mean, I got to shout out Chris Charles, I got to shout out A-Ray, I got to shout out those guys, even Tommy Grace. It was like, yo, we a family here. And I had great leaders to follow. Like, I look at these dudes like, man, these dudes are all pros. Like, I got to get to that level. And then you had you that kind of, and we talk about this all the time. We ain't talk about basketball.
No, man. I wasn't worried about you in basketball. I was never worried about you in basketball.
He's not the type of person that's gonna like get out there and like lead by now. Like lead by where he's saying something. He was leading by example.
We were trying to teach you guys. We weren't using the word ugly. We were trying to teach you to play Villanova hard, but that was ugly. And then he happened to come in, and when we recruited him, we weren't thinking of that, but he came in at the perfect time when you guys you knew how to play, and you just didn't know how to do it ugly.
Before Kyle got here, we always remember it like we were almost a finished product, and then he added to it. I don't know if we all knew that we were going to get it done. We weren't like, all right, we got it this year. We had a good finish the previous year, but we didn't know.
Boy, that was a really outstanding team. Those young men have grown in to become fine adults too. Jay Wright's got to be really proud of that group.
Yeah, they were Coach Wright's building blocks. That was his first really good class, with Foy and Alan Ray and Sumter and Jason Frazier, adding Nardi, adding Lowry, a heck of a team.
It really was. It was a great run, and Villanova's been on a great run ever since then. So those guys really did lay the foundation, as you mentioned. And that foundation built all the way up to last Saturday, where we go on the road to Cincinnati. The Wildcats come away with a 64-55 win. Talk a little bit about the environment in that Cintas Center.
Well, people that heard me on the radio talk about what it was going to be like. I nailed it. Every once in a while I stumble upon and get something right. But we talked about the atmosphere. You pull onto that campus, it's a lovely campus, bucolic, and a beautiful day. It was 55 degrees and clear skies. But you start to see them from the distance. These students lined up maybe 6 or 7 deep along the building, maybe 100 yards long, wrap around the building, and they're just nice-looking young people, right? And the Villanova bus pulls up towards them. We're all kind of looking out the window how cool it is. These people that terrific and excited about their team. And then they all start giving us gesticulations with their fingers. And you say, wow, where'd that all come from? And it kind of continued inside. They come in the building early, sit up close, they make a lot of noise. It's a great home court atmosphere. And you're a player like I was a player. I would much rather, as a visiting player, play in an atmosphere like that than one that's dead. You want to play, you let the crowd come after you.
And that's what Coach Wright mentioned a lot about the Big East. You're going into all these types of environments. You know, we've been to Creighton, we've been to Providence. You see these types of places where basketball is the most important thing at that school, and a lot of times in that city.
That's why sometimes actually the NCAA tournament isn't as much fun as some of these games. You go to Butler, you go to Providence, you go to Xavier. That's a great atmosphere. Tournament, at least in the early rounds, can be a little bit staid.
Yeah, and Xavier this year specifically is really insider. Tyreek Jones, Najee Marshall, they're big and physical. They're going to try to beat you up on the glass, get the ball inside. How do you feel that Villanova did against trying to cut down that size advantage that Xavier held?
Well, like you know, they knew what they were up against. They knew that Jones and Najee Marshall will kind of just pound it inside. This team does not shoot particularly well from the perimeter. I'm not sure if you can be successful the ball off the perimeter. But what they did, especially much more in the second half, they just pounded it inside Tyreek Jones, who had 17, all of his points in the second half. But Robinson Earl stood up tall. I thought he did a pretty good job. He's playing against one of the biggest, strongest players in the Big East Conference. I think Jeremiah did a pretty good job against him. And overall, defensively, Villanova has been just tremendous, and that's what's winning games for them.
And it was in a big part of that, I think, too, was Jermaine Samuels, who got 8 rebounds in that game and go to his 17 points. So he was a big factor in the win as well for the Wildcats. Xavier, as you mentioned, I think defensively, what they wanted to do was limit Villanova's three-point attempts. They didn't do a great job of limiting them. They made them all pretty difficult. Villanova made twos. Wildcats were able to knock down 7 threes, but it took a large number of them to get to 7.
Yeah, and they had made 35 threes in their 2 prior games total. That's a lot of threes. So you're right. Xavier certainly wanted, and we learned from Travis Steele in his press conference, they wanted still made twice as many threes as Xavier did, but Villanova did a better job recognizing. We've seen this team this year win games making 18 threes, win games making 6. In this game, they made 7 threes and still were able to get a good road victory.
And I think what Coach Wright talked about in his press conference, you mentioned the postgame from Travis Steele, was he thought this might have been his team's best defensive effort. You hold a Big East team to 55 points on the road. You know, usually teams at home are going to shoot the ball a little bit better than they do on the road. And to hold a really good Xavier team, an NCAA tournament team right now, as all the projections lay, to 55 points.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the 2 best wins of the season, that one was up there. That might be 1A. I think the game at Creighton, also a defensive gem for Villanova, but Villanova did not play well offensively at all in Creighton. This game they played better offensively, but those were the 2 best efforts I think of Villanova this year. 2 big wins, winning at Creighton. Not a lot of teams do that. Only one this year, Villanova.
And you talk about who played well offensively for Villanova. I think Sadiq Bey, led the Wildcats with 22 points. I mentioned Jermaine Samuels earlier, but how about the Wildcats getting a 9-point win and Colin Gillespie being held to 4 points?
Yeah, and you and I talk all the time. We think if Colin plays well, this team's probably going to win, and he plays well most of the time. Did not play particularly well offensively in this one, but you're right. Jermaine Samuels, we picked him on the radio. He was our player of the game. He was terrific from beginning to end, and Sadiq Bey simply is becoming one of the best players in the country.
And you talk about with Jermaine, he had 17 points. It's above his average, but it's not a huge game. But when he got those 17 points, I thought was really critical. Every time it seemed like that Xavier made a little bit of a run. They had a 9-2 run in the first half. I think an 8-0 run in the second half. It seemed like Jermaine made the basket to stop those runs.
It seems this season, Steve, that Jermaine Samuels has made the biggest shots in games when he had to. Made the huge shot against Kansas to clinch that win. Made a big shot in this game. With the other teams coming back a little bit, Jermaine finds a way to make a shot. And frankly, usually a 3, which is a little unusual.
I remember the one against UConn as well. That was big down the stretch.
Big one against UConn. But he also took the ball in the post. He made some 8-foot fallaways, especially early in the game. He was especially aggressive, I thought, offensively. I think part of that is I think he's physically feeling better. He was hurt. He had 2 different injuries going for 3 or 4 games where it really slowed him down. He's an athletic kid. He's a runner. He needs to be fully fit.
Now, obviously, Xavier suffers a tough home loss. And we're going to talk about this, but in my opinion, I think they're an NCAA tournament team. But how do you think that loss, you've seen them twice now, you've seen them in this league, how do you think it affects their postseason?
Well, I think losing to Villanova on the road doesn't hurt them too much. They're 12th ranked in the country. Losing at home hurts them a little bit more. But I also think they stood up. It wasn't like they lost by 20. They lost by under double digits. They played a very good Villanova team that's highly projected as far as the NCAA tournament. I think playing in this league, playing against teams like Villanova game in and game out is going to do nothing but help them whether they win or lose.
Yeah, and this schedule is a little bit there's no easy games
Softer,
in this conference.
yeah.
A little bit, and they do have DePaul left at home, so there are some opportunities out there for them to get a couple more wins before the end of this season.
Yeah, again, I think they will get those wins, and I think Xavier, when it all shakes out, will get to the NCAA tournament.
And what can the Wildcats take forward? From that game going on the road, now you're coming home to play a St. John's team. What do you think the Coach Wright and that staff want to carry over from Saturday to Wednesday night?
Well, I think he can just reinforce all the things he's been saying all season long about how important defense and rebounding are to us. We play defense, we're going to win games. When they've held their opponents under 70 points, they're 16-0. Yeah. Well, that says it all. So, guys, hold the other team under 70 points, you're going to win the game. That's the way the history's gone this season.
Yeah, and the other stat I saw was very interesting. When Jermaine Samuels scores 12 or more points, I think the Wildcats are like 14-1. So when Jermaine can get get the ball to Jermaine.
Need to get him going early.
And keep playing defense. But that seems to be the recipe for Villanova to be successful this year. We're going to come back with a little bit more to count down the tip-off show. We're going to preview the St. John's Red Storm after this. Back to the Finneran Pavilion for the Countdown to Tip-Off shows. Wildcats prepare to take on the St. John's Red Storm here in Big East action. As I mentioned earlier in the show, the Red Storm come in at 14-13 overall, 3-11 in the Big East. Whitey, it's been a struggle as late. They had a great start to the season. They've struggled in conference play a little bit.
Kind of like DePaul. They had a really great preseason, part of the whole Big East having a great preseason, as did DePaul. They've struggled once they got into the league play, and it just shows the strength of this league top to bottom. They did have a really good win the other day. They beat Providence at home, which is a good win for Providence. The team has a chance to, if they finish strong, can get the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and in non-conference, had a win over Arizona on a neutral court back in December. So part of what Whitey was describing, the really effective play of the Big East in the non-conference schedule has really set them up to potentially have 6 or 7 teams make the NCAA tournament. So St. John's coming in probably needs to win the Big East tournament to have any opportunity to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, as good a win as that Arizona game was, and that was a very good win. They can't get to the tournament without winning the Big East tournament. I think this year they're probably hoping to get to the NIT, maybe play a game or two in New York would be great for them.
And Whitey, tell the fans a little bit what they should expect from St. John's. And they got a first-year head coach. A lot of folks may have not seen a lot of their games. How are they going to play?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Mike Anderson is a guy who when he came to St. John's was expected to be a guy who was going to play 94 feet of pressing defense all the time, kind of like Nolan Richardson. Full court pressure that much. They played a little bit, but not the entire time. And that was a little surprising to us.
Yeah, I think a little bit. It's probably a depth issue that he doesn't have his own recruits in yet. Doesn't have enough players to probably play the system he's really comfortable with. And in that game, they did try to press him. Villanova did a good job of. They always want to attack pressure, push the ball up the floor, try to get some easy baskets, which Villanova normally doesn't get. They play a lot of half court. But against a team that's going to make you play fast, I think they may look for some opportunities to score.
Yeah, if St. John's is going to pressure and play 94 feet of basketball, Villanova's going to try to shove it down their throat. Once Villanova's had a little bit of problem getting the ball in bounds. Once they get in bounds, off they go.
And who do you expect to see from St. John? Who are the keys that Villanova needs to stop today? If St. John's going to have a good game, who's going to have to play well?
Well, we said going into the season they had two players in particular we knew from last year. LJ Figueroa, 6'7" guy who can shoot from pretty far out and will shoot a lot. Made 7 threes in the game earlier this season, and he was okay against Villanova the first time. And Mustafa Heron was their other player, the transfer from Auburn,
yes,
if I remember correctly, who's now I think out for the rest of the season.
He's got a bad ankle. He won't play tonight, and he's supposed to be out the rest of the year.
Yeah, we will not see him tonight. It looks like he's done for the rest of the year, which really hurts their chance. He was their second offensive weapon. Now, Rasheem Dunn had 24 against Villanova last time. A guard, plays hard, plays up and down, gets in the passing lane, gets some steals, gets some easy opportunities. Those were the guys mainly you'll be looking for, Figueroa and Dunn.
Yeah, and I like Dunn in the game up in the guard. He did a good job using those ball screens. He hit a couple threes, but mostly got to the rim, got to the basket, and was able to finish some unorthodox ways, but was able to put the ball in the basket really. And he said he was their main offensive threat. Figueroa had points, but he had to shoot a very low percentage to get those points.
I also think Dunn might have snuck up a little bit on Villanova. Like, when you prepared for St. John's back then a month ago, you were looking at Heron and you were looking at Figueroa. Those are the two guys you were preparing for. You weren't thinking much of Rasheem Dunn, who ended up having a very good game against the Wildcats that evening.
The Wildcats win that game in the Garden 79-59 without Jermaine Samuels. That was right after the Providence game where he had the issue with his foot and did not play. Cole Swider started in that game, played very well. What does St. John's need to do? Obviously, you get a 20-point loss at home. What do you need to do now to go on the road?
Well, they need to defend better. They need to defend better all over. Colin Gillespie was very good in that game up there. He also had 13 rebounds. I remember he was all-time live. And if you remember, Coach Wright only played 5 guys most of that game. I think Slater got in, Brendan played some, but all 5 starters played 32 minutes or more in that game. And again, playing without Jermaine Samuels is huge for Villanova because he brings so much to the table on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, he's so versatile. He guards inside, he guards outside, he can score in the perimeter. As we saw at Xavier, scoring in a little block a little bit now, and he did a really good job on the glass. So obviously having Jermaine back for Villanova tonight will be a huge lift to their team.
Yeah, he's their best athlete by far. Running, jumping. He always seems to get a big block in a key spot in the game, a defensive block. So he's an important guy. To have him back for Villanova at full capacity is tremendous.
Now you get a 20-point win on the road, but what's Coach Wright look when he's looking at that game film of the game up at the Garden? What's he seeing that we need to improve on?
Well, I think he's going to say to prepare for their pressure, because I think he's going to expect their pressure to be greater than it was in the Garden. Granted, you're playing on the road. When you play on the road, as you've always said, you don't shoot the ball as well. So Mike Anderson is going to have his team defend better, try to force some steals. Steals become baskets.
And I think for St. John's to score, they're going to need more than 59 tonight, obviously.
Yeah.
They're going to need to get some easy baskets. Villanova was able to guard them pretty effectively in the half court in that game. Dunn had a good game, but was able to really kind of match up with everybody else. So for St. John's, I think if they can't get turnovers and easy baskets, and when you get that steal and you get a layup, you get energized, and you might get another one right after it. So I think, obviously the big key is going to be, can St. John's turn Villanova over and then get some easy baskets? I think they're going to need them.
This is not going to be a 59-57 win for St. John's. St. John's is going to have to probably score in the 70s, because I think at home, Villanova will shoot the ball better than they did in the Garden. And again, they have more guys at Villanova now winning these last 3 or 4 games. 3 games in a row you win on the road. It really helps your confidence.
Yeah, and I think one of the development that we haven't is back then, you mentioned only Brandon Slater got a few minutes out of it. Demir Cosby-Roundtree has really stepped up, especially in this. You get a veteran junior player who's played really well in those 3 road games and also was a factor in the Marquette home win that started this 4-game winning streak. So now with Jermaine back and Demir playing more minutes, it gives Villanova much more depth in this game they had up at the Garden.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brandon Slater, who played 14 minutes in the Garden, is playing about that amount in each game. He usually comes in as a defensive guy. He made some good plays in the game out in Xavier in Cincinnati the other day. Brandon Slater is a guy that Jay Wright knows he can count on, especially on the defensive end of the court.
Yeah, and I think defensively is where Coach Wright's going to want to make his stand with this group. Because as you talk about offense comes and goes, after Saturday there aren't no more home games. There's no more home games, so you're going to be playing road games or neutral site games. So you're going to really rely on your defense. And as good as some of these, even Villanova's national championship teams were, it really started on the defensive end.
Yeah, and I think he's counting so much on Sadiq Bey as a big part of the offense. Sadiq guards the other team's best player all the time. And I think when Brandon Slater's on the floor, he takes some of the pressure off Sadiq, where he'll go guard Marcus Howard. He'll guard LJ Figueroa tonight. So I think that's why Brandon Slater really helps. He helps give Sadiq Bey a bit of a break.
And a lot of things that I think guys that don't get mentioned a lot defensively are interior players, because the guys that are out guarding the high-scoring guards kind of get to know, but the defensive job that Jeremiah Robinson Earl has done all year. And Tariq Jones, he shuts him out in the first half when it was a game. The Wildcats went in with a 9-point lead at halftime, and then Tariq Jones got some stuff going because Jeremiah got in a little bit of foul trouble. But talk about, as a freshman, the defensive presence he's been for Villanova.
Well, and he's clearly the freshman of the year in the league. There's no question about that. You can just write down 10 rebounds next to his name every game. I think he had 14 against Xavier, against a big, strong front line. And defensively, he's learning. And I think he came in as somewhat of a finished product defensively. I always thought Coach Wright,
which is unusual. You always say, but you recruit offensive players and try to teach them how to play defense.
We don't recruit defensive players at this level, but he came in. He's just such a knowledgeable player, a cerebral player, especially for a young kid. I mean, he's an 18, 19-year-old kid, and to understand Coach Wright's defensive schemes, I think he's been wonderful. He's been a joy to watch and be around.
And I would argue he's the most valuable defender because he's involved in every play. The way offense is run now in college, it's all high ball screens.
Always.
Well, he's always the guy playing the guy that's setting the ball screen. So he's hedging, he's double, he's going underneath, he's setting up his teammate to kind of go over the top or however he wants to play that. So it's his communication. And usually as freshmen, they're not that vocal.
No.
This kid is a vocal kid. He's not want to say outspoken, but he's comfortable in his own skin to be out there leading this team as a young player.
And he really understands the game and understands defense. I think Coach Wright would tell you he was taught well. Someone taught him well before he got here, because he understands angles on those screens you talk about, whether you should slip it, whether you should fight over the top, whatever it is. And he's done a great job with it. And you're right, he's probably the single key to their defense.
Yeah, and I think what a big part of tonight's game is going to be, which is Dunn trying to get in the lane. In the Garden, we stayed out on the shooters and made him finish, and he was able to do that. But when you can collapse the defense, if he can keep Dunn out of the lane coming off that ball screen, and it really just hurts their offense. They're not going to get open threes. They're going to have contested shots, and then you limit them to one shot, and you got a great opportunity to come away with a victory tonight.
Yeah, and St. John's, they lost by 20 at home to us. They're not a bad basketball team. You know, they had Xavier beaten. They just beat Providence at home. I mean, they gave Xavier the game back after being ahead in that game. So this is a team that's going to come in. They know this game could make their season by beating Villanova.
And they have a road win at DePaul, so they know what it is to win in this league on the road. They've had some games at home. You mentioned the Xavier game, the Georgetown game as well. They were up big and it slipped away late. So a lot of times, you know, you have a hard time finishing games. You got to, you know, making those winning plays down the stretch has seen kind of eluded them here in Big East play.
And don't think by beating Villanova in this game tonight, I mean, isn't going to help them as they even go back to the Garden for the Big East tournaments. Hey, we get past the first round. Maybe we catch Villanova. They know we can beat them.
Yeah, that's true. And we're going to take a quick break with the Countdown to Tip-Off show. We'll be back with more of the upcoming schedule right after this. Welcome back to the Countdown to Tip-Off show here from the Finneran Pavilion as Wildcats prepare to take on the St. John's Red Storm. And Whitey, this Big East race is coming right down to the finish. Obviously, Wildcats with 4 games remaining after tonight. 4 games including tonight, and then 3 games left for both Seton Hall and Creighton. How do you see this thing breaking down?
Well, it's interesting. Villanova still could come in first, second, or third. They're not. I don't think they have any shot of coming in fourth. That would be difficult. First, second, or third. So that makes it very interesting. And in those last 3 games, those 3 teams all play each other. Villanova plays Seton Hall plays Creighton and Villanova. So I mean, there's a lot can still happen.
Yeah, I think if you're a neutral observer and you look at this, you probably think Creighton has a little bit of the advantage. Now Seton Hall has a 1-game lead, but Seton Hall has to go to Creighton, has Villanova coming then. Those are 2 difficult games where Creighton has a pretty easy, well, I don't say easy schedule, an easier schedule, I would say, with Georgetown at home, at St. John's, and then hosting Seton Hall to end the season.
Yeah, and Seton Hall has been I still think Seton Hall is the best team, but I think Seton Hall having to go to Creighton, might be the most difficult place to play right now. Creighton, I think, is playing better than anyone else right now.
Yeah, they are. I think they're at the top of their game. You mentioned only lost 1 game at home all year. That was to Villanova back in early January. So I got a chance to see Creighton over the weekend. They look great, and Seton Hall has kind of hit that thing where they kind of found their stride last week against Butler.
Yeah, Creighton kind of has taken a page out of Jay Wright's book as well. They're playing a lot of guards, a lot of small people. Tyshawn Alexander's had one of the best seasons of anybody in this league. You know, people talk so much about Miles Powell and Marcus Howard. I think Tyshawn Alexander is almost at the same level as far as a player in this league this year. Yeah. I think he's been terrific.
And he does it on both ends of the floor.
Both ends of the floor. He did a great job.
Yeah, there'll be a good chance he's a first-team All-League player and also a first-team All-League defensive player.
Yeah, he did a great job guarding Sadiq Bey when we played him down at the Wells Fargo Center.
So obviously, the Wildcats play the Red Storm tonight. Then they'll host Providence on Saturday at the Wells Fargo Center. Then they got to go on the road for 2 at Seton Hall, which will obviously be a huge game, and then finish up at Georgetown.
Yeah. We like to talk about just take next game, Steve. So I don't want to talk, but no. Oh yeah, we have St. John's tonight and Georgetown. Obviously, you have to get those 2. You know, there was a time just a little bit ago where we had 5 of our last 7 on the road. Well, now we only have 2 of our last 4 on the road. So we managed to win those games. Now you have to protect your home turf.
Yeah, now, so there are still tickets available for Saturday's game against Providence at noon at the Wells Fargo Center at wellsfargocenterphilly.com or at 610-519-4100. So let's go Cats tonight. We look forward to seeing everyone out at the Wells Fargo Center on Saturday.